Zoe was tired of choosing truth and exposing her own disgrace. "I choose dare," she said, a decision she immediately regretted. Her friends grinned, gesturing toward the crowded basketball court. The challenge was clear. She would have to walk into the middle of that court and shoot. Jack, the captain of the school's most handsome and cool basketball team, in front of everyone. It was a Friday afternoon, and the weather was too beautiful to be spent indoors. A lazy, golden sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the history classroom, making the floating chalk dust look like fireflies. Normally, this was the most agonizing period of the week. But today Ms. Albright, the notoriously strict and feared history teacher, was at a faculty meeting. Meaning no teacher. Meaning time to mess around. The junior history class, grade 11, immediately exploded into contained chaos. In the front corner, Kevin and his friends were drawing a wildly disproportioned caricature of the principal on the whiteboard. In the middle rows, the popular girls huddled, whispering and laughing as they compared their phone screens. But in the back corner, near the open window, was where the real fun was happening.
"Spin it again!"
hissed Chloe, leaning forward. Zoe, Mia, and Chloe were sitting in a circle on the floor, ignoring their desks. In the center of them was an empty dry erase marker, which had just stopped spinning, its cap pointing straight at Zoe. This was Zoe's third spin in a row.
"Come on, Zoe,"
said Mia, her eyes sparkling with mischief.
"You know the game. Truth or dare. If you pick truth, we hit you with a humiliatingly dumb question. If you pick dare, we give you a ridiculous laugh-out-loud challenge."
Chloe's phone lay in the middle of a pile of notebooks. Its screen lit up with Zoe's name.
"Okay, Zoe, truth or dare?"
Ew.
Zoe groaned, leaning her head back against the cold brick wall of the hallway. The final bell had rung 15 minutes ago, but Chloe and Mia insisted on their Friday afternoon ritual.
"I've picked truth 3 times in a row. I am not retelling the story of the last time. I accidentally sent an embarrassing text to the physics teacher."
That's because your stories are hilarious,
Mia said, chomping on her gum.
"So, truth again?"
"No."
Zoe straightened up. She was sick of feeling like an open, embarrassing diary.
"I'm bored. I pick dare."
A brief silence. Then Chloe and Mia exchanged a look. It was the kind of look Zoe knew all too well. The same look they'd shared right before convincing Zoe to cut her own bangs in 8th grade. It was their here comes trouble look.
Okay.
Chloe drew out the word, a sly smile starting to form.
"A dare, huh?"
She got up and pointed down the hall, toward the set of large double doors that led to the gym. From beyond them came the sound of squeaking sneakers on the varnished floor, the steady bounce of a ball, and shouted commands. The varsity basketball team's practice was in full swing.
"You know Jack's practicing, right?"
Mia said, her grin just as wide as Chloe's. Zoe's heart felt like it jumped into her throat.
Of course she knew.
She always knew Jack's practice schedule. It was her biggest, most closely guarded secret, a pathetic fact she kept in the deepest part of her brain along with old boy band lyrics.
"Your dare,"
Chloe said, her eyes sparkling with pure mischief,
"is to go in there right now and declare your love for Jack in front of everyone."
The color drained from Zoe's face.
"What? You guys are crazy. No way. Absolutely not."
She jumped to her feet.
"He's practicing. There's Coach Henderson. The whole team is in there."
"That's the point, Zoe."
Mia urged, already pulling out her phone.
"It's a dare, not a nice and easy thing."
"I don't want to,"
Zoe said, her voice rising an octave.
"Oh, come on, Zoe. Don't be a wimp."
Chloe grabbed one of Zoe's arms. Mia grabbed the other.
"You can't back out of a dare."
Before Zoe could protest any further, they were already dragging her down the hall. Zoe tried to plant her feet, but they were stronger, fueled by their own stifled laughter.
"You guys are not serious. Let me go. I'll take a truth. I'll tell you any secret."
"Too late,"
Chloe called out, shoving one of the gym doors open. The sounds inside immediately became 10 times louder. The air smelled of sweat, dust, and, well, gym. The entire team was there, running drills. And in the middle of it all, listening to the coach's instructions, was Jack. Tall, sweaty, and looking like a Greek god in basketball shorts. Chloe and Mia shoved Zoe forward, right onto the edge of the court. The practice screeched to a halt. A whistle cut through the air. The squeaking of sneakers stopped. 12 sweaty heads turned in unison toward Zoe. Coach Henderson looked annoyed.
Can I help you, ladies?
Jack, who was wiping his face on his jersey, turned. His eyes met Zoe's. Total silence.
Go, Zoe.
Mia yelled from the doorway, her phone held high, recording.
Do it.
Zoe felt all the blood in her body rush to her face, then down to her feet, then back up again. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to die. She wanted this to be over. Fine. If it had to be over, she'd just end it. She took one shaky breath, stared straight at the bewildered basketball captain, and screamed in a high-pitched voice that sounded nothing like her own.
Jack, I have a crush on you. Will you? Will you go out with me?
The silence that followed was so thick, Zoe was sure she could touch it. It felt like it lasted for a century. Then from the doorway, the laughter exploded. Chloe and Mia were howling, holding on to each other as if it was the funniest thing they had ever witnessed. A few of the players on the bench started to snicker. Zoe's face turned beet red. She covered her face with her hands, ready to either cry or faint, maybe both. But Jack wasn't laughing. He was still holding the basketball on his hip. He was looking straight at Zoe, past his confused teammates. He'd seen Zoe around before, in the library during lunch, in chemistry class where she always knew the answers. He thought she was cute, in a fast-talking when nervous kind of way. And this chaotic, awkward, and utterly mortifying confession somehow felt honest. He figured this must just be her own incredibly shy way of finally working up the nerve to talk to him. With a slight smile, ignoring the entire watching gym, Jack said clearly, his voice carrying in the quiet room.
Okay, yeah?
Chloe and Mia's laughter from the doorway stopped instantly. Their jaws dropped. The team players gaped. Coach Henderson looked like he'd just swallowed his whistle. Zoe slowly lowered her hands from her face, her eyes wide with disbelief.
What?
She whispered. Jack started walking casually toward her, idly bouncing the ball. He ignored the chaos he had just created, stopping right in front of Zoe. He was so much taller up close.
I said,
He repeated, his voice lower now, just for her.
yeah, I will.
He tilted his head.
So we are dating now.
Zoe woke up on Saturday to a vague feeling of nausea. For a moment, in the fog between sleep and consciousness, everything was normal. Then she saw her phone on the nightstand. It was vibrating nonstop. Her normally quiet lock screen was flooded with notifications. Dozens of texts from Chloe and Mia, of course, but also from names she barely interacted with. The chemistry class group chat was buzzing. Someone had even added her to a new group chat titled Zoe and Jack. The news had spread like wildfire in a dry season. Zoe the average girl. Zoe who always sat in the third row, whose hoodies were always oversized, who spent lunch debating game theory instead of gossip, was now officially Jack's girlfriend. Zoe shoved her face into her pillow and screamed. The sound was muffled by the fabric, pathetic even to her own ears. It hadn't been a dream. She spent the entire weekend in a state of suspended panic. Every vibration from her phone made her heart leap. She answered Chloe and Mia's questions with evasive, one-word answers, ignoring everyone else. She convinced herself that by Monday it would all be over. Jack would realize his mistake, or maybe he'd just laugh it off as a good joke. But on Monday morning at 7:15 a.m., a new shock arrived. Her phone buzzed once. Not a group text. It was a number she didn't recognize. But the profile picture was unmistakable. Jack, smiling on the basketball court.
Jack, morning. Hope you have a good day.
Zoe stared at the screen for so long that her phone dimmed back to black. Her heart didn't flutter. It sank. The text was so simple, so normal, so genuine. He was 100% sincere. This was the realization that hit Zoe like ice water. This wasn't a joke to him. He wasn't playing her, he thought. He thought her confession was real. And he, in the most unbelievable way possible, had accepted it. Zoe typed a reply, "Hey," then deleted it. "You too," then deleted it. She finally just put her phone down, the nausea returning in full force. She didn't reply. Walking into the school's front gates that day felt like walking into an arena. The normally loud, bustling hallway seemed to quiet as she stepped inside. Zoe could feel it. A wave of stares following her like a spotlight. Freshmen pointed openly. Seniors, who usually never knew she existed, were now looking her up and down. She wasn't Zoe anymore. She was an anomaly, a zoo exhibit. She kept her head down, pulling the strings of her hoodie tighter, wishing she could turn invisible. Her only goal, her locker. And that's where she saw him. Jack was leaning against the bank of blue lockers as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He wasn't surrounded by his team. He was alone, waiting for her. Zoe stopped in her tracks. The distance between them was maybe 15 feet, but it felt like an uncrossable chasm. She couldn't breathe. Jack saw her and smiled. It wasn't the arrogant smile of the basketball captain she'd seen in the gym. It was a quiet, genuine smile.
Hey, Zoe.
He said. Zoe swallowed, her throat dry. She could only manage a nod in reply, not trusting her own voice. She walked stiffly to her locker, which, inconveniently, was only 5 lockers down from where Jack stood.
You didn't text me back this morning?
Jack said, his voice still casual, but with a slight hint of a question in it. Zoe fumbled with her combination lock. Her fingers were shaking. She missed it on the first try and had to start over.
Oh.
Her voice came out small.
Sorry, I woke up late.
It was a weak lie, and she knew it. But Jack just gave a small laugh.
No problem. Just wanted to make sure you got here okay.
She pulled her squeaking locker open. An awkward silence settled over them. Zoe could feel Chloe's and Mia's stares from across the hall. She could feel everyone's stares. The peak of it all came at lunch. Zoe tried to sneak into the cafeteria, hoping to grab a sandwich and hide in the library, but Jack was waiting for her at the entrance.
Figured we could eat together,
he said again, as if it were a foregone conclusion. And eating together meant he led Zoe, past the chess club table, past the theater kids' table, past Zoe's usual table in the corner, directly into the epicenter of the school's social life. The athletes' table. It was packed. Hulking basketball and football players, cheerleaders in their uniforms. As Jack and Zoe approached, the conversation at the table dimmed. Jack casually slid into the only open spot, pulling Zoe down to sit beside him. Zoe sat on the very edge of the bench, her body rigid as a board. She spent the next 30 minutes in pure misery. She poked at her salad, not taking a single bite. The air around her was filled with chatter about games, parties, and who broke up with who. Jack, beside her, was treating her like a real girlfriend. He asked her questions about her day. He explained their team's inside jokes that Zoe didn't understand. At one point, he casually draped his arm over the back of the seat behind Zoe. Every kind gesture Jack made, every sincere smile, every attempt to include her, felt like a tiny needle of guilt stabbing into Zoe's skin. She had stumbled into every girl's dream at this school, and she had gotten it through a lie. She looked at Jack, who was laughing at one of his friend's jokes, and one terrifying thought hit her. Jack was a genuinely nice person, and she was a terrible liar. The final bell of the day rang, its sound like a starting pistol for a race. For Zoe, it was a race to escape. All day, she had perfected the art of being invisible. She walked quickly between classes, shoulders hunched, hood pulled over her ears. She ate lunch in the library, sacrificing food for peace, lying to Jack over text that she had to work on an urgent assignment. She had successfully avoided Jack ever since the awkward incident in the cafeteria yesterday. Now, all she had to do was get out of the building. She threw her notebooks into her bag in a hurry, ignoring the chatter of her classmates around her. She was the first one to stand, the first to reach the classroom door. She took a breath, pushed the door open, and stepped into the crowded hallway. And she froze. It was like déjà vu from a nightmare. Jack was there, leaning against the opposite wall, directly across from her classroom door. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't talking to his friends. He was waiting for her. His eyes found Zoe's instantly. Zoe's heart felt like it stopped, then started again with a painful, panicked rhythm. She couldn't run. Behind her, the classroom door swung wide open, and a wave of students spilled into the hall. Her classmates, including Chloe and Mia, tumbled out. The commotion happened in seconds. First, a brief silence as they saw Zoe, then looked at Jack. Then, the whispers started.
Oh my God, he's there again.
You, Zoe.
He's actually waiting for her right outside class ...
It wasn't whispering anymore. It had become a wave of teasing cheers. Zoe felt her face heat up, a deep red blush crawling from her neck to the tips of her ears. She could feel every pair of eyes in the hallway, judging her, assessing her, laughing at her. She glanced over at Chloe and Mia, who were standing at the edge of the crowd, grinning widely. They were enjoying the show. And suddenly, Zoe's embarrassment turned into something hotter and sharper: anger. This was their fault. This whole humiliating theater was their creation. They knew it was a lie. They knew she was trapped. And they dare to laugh at her? Zoe stalked forward, moving away from the door. As she passed her two friends, she didn't even look at them. She just hissed two words in a low, furious voice, just for them to hear.
Shut up, guys.
Their expressions froze, but Zoe didn't care. Her anger gave her the courage to cross the 10 feet to where Jack was standing. But that anger evaporated as soon as she was face to face with him. Anger was useless against this. Against the bewildering sincerity on Jack's face. He wasn't paying attention to the crowd. He didn't care about the whispers. He was just smiling at Zoe, the same genuine smile that had been haunting her all day.
Hey.
He said, his voice calm and low, cutting through the noise around them.
Ready to go?
All of Zoe's defenses crumbled. The anger was gone, leaving only a cold, heavy guilt. She couldn't meet his eyes. If she met his eyes, he'd see the liar behind them. Zoe stared at the seam on the shoulder of Jack's t-shirt.
Oh, hey, Jack.
Her voice was barely audible, stiff and small. She nodded once, still not daring to look up.
Yeah, let's go.
The walk home that day was the longest torment of Zoe's life. Jack walked beside her, keeping a polite distance, as if he could sense how wound up she was. He was the one to break the silence, his voice casual, he said, kicking a small pebble on the sidewalk.
So chemistry, you seem pretty great at it. Mrs. Harrison is always praising your essays.
Zoe flinched. She'd forgotten Jack was in the same chem class. She sat near the front. He sat in the back with the other athletes. Zoe had assumed they just slept through it.
Oh, it's just chemistry,
she said again.
I'm terrible at it.
Jack said with a small laugh.
I much prefer the numbers on a scoreboard to the ones on the periodic table.
He glanced over at Zoe.
Maybe you could help me study sometime?
It was a simple request, a normal one, something a guy would ask. But to Zoe, it felt like a trap. If she said yes, it would be another lie, another promise built on the fake foundation.
Maybe,
she said, her voice quiet.
My schedule is kind of full.
Jack just nodded, not seeming offended.
Sure, no problem.
He walked her all the way to her street corner, just like a nice guy would. When they parted, there was no hug, no hand-holding, just an awkward,
see you tomorrow,
from Zoe, and a warm,
see ya,
from Jack. Zoe ran into her house, locked the door, and leaned against it, closing her eyes. Her heart was hammering, not from love, but from a narrow escape. The next few days began to form a strange, agonizing pattern. Zoe was trapped. Their dating status hardened from gossip into accepted school fact. The stares turned from shocked to envious. Cheerleaders who used to ignore her now nodded at her in the halls with thin, forced smiles. And Jack was completely, devastatingly sincere. He wasn't a performative boyfriend. He didn't pull her into the middle of the quad for a dramatic kiss. He did small things that were infinitely worse. He remembered that she always drank a vanilla latte. He texted her asking how her history presentation went. He listened. Every kind gesture he made, every small act of attention, felt like a prick of guilt. She was starting to genuinely like the real Jack. Not the Jack the captain whose poster hung in the gym, but the Jack who talked about his annoying little sister. The Jack who complained about the pressure from his father to always win. The Jack who had observant eyes and a slightly shy smile when he wasn't on. She realized the tragic irony. She was the only person in school seeing the real Jack. And she was the only person in school who Jack was seeing as a liar. She knew she had to tell him the truth. Over and over she prepared the words. She'd meet him at his locker, open her mouth, ready to say,
Jack, I have to confess.
And right then Jack would smile.
Oh, hey Zoe, I saved you a seat at lunch.
Or,
great job in the physics debate today, you really shut everyone up.
And Zoe would cower out. She couldn't bear to see that genuine face fall. She couldn't be the one to wipe that smile away. She was afraid Jack wouldn't just be angry. She was afraid he'd be hurt. And somehow that felt infinitely worse than being hated by the entire school. She pulled away from Chloe and Mia, too. They tried to talk to her, at first with giddy excitement. So, have you kissed him yet? None, and then with confusion as Zoe kept brushing them off.
What's wrong with you, Zoe?
Chloe asked at lunch, finally cornering her by the bathrooms.
You got what everyone wants.
This isn't what I wanted.
Zoe snapped back, her voice shaking with pent-up emotion.
It was your dare.
You forced me,
But he said yes. Just enjoy it.
Mia said.
Enjoy what?
Zoe hissed.
Enjoying feeling sick to my stomach every time he's nice to me. Enjoying the lie.
Chloe and Mia were silent. They had no answer for that. Zoe left them standing there. She was alone, trapped in a fake relationship that, ironically, felt more real than any friendship she'd ever had. She had her dream, and it was a nightmare. She didn't want it to end, but she couldn't bear for it to continue. Friday night, the gymnasium lights felt 1,000 times brighter than usual, bearing down on the hardwood floor where the varsity team was, battling it out in the semifinals. The air was hot and dense, smelling of popcorn and sweat. The crowd was a roaring beast, their voices echoing off the walls, creating a deafening cacophony. Zoe sat in the 6th row, feeling cold. She shouldn't have been here. Jack had invited her so casually.
It's the big game. I'd really like it if you were there.
Zoe couldn't find a way to refuse without raising suspicion. So here she was, sitting like an imposter in a seat of honor. Chloe and Mia were a few rows below, looking back at her from time to time with a strange mix of guilt and excitement, as if they were creators admiring their successful monster. On the court, Jack was playing like a man possessed. He was everywhere, stealing the ball, making impossible passes, and scoring as if the hoop were 3 times its size. He was playing with an almost frightening intensity, something Zoe had never seen before, and he kept looking at her. Every time out, after every successful free throw, his eyes would scan the crowd until they found Zoe's. He'd give her a small nod or a fleeting smile. Every glance felt like a blow. Zoe would force a small smile in return, while inside her stomach twisted. She knew what everyone was thinking. Look, he's playing for her. And the worst part was, they were right. He was playing for her, or rather, for the idea of her that Zoe had accidentally created. The clock showed 5 seconds left in the 4th quarter. Their team was down by 1. Coach Henderson yelled from the sidelines. The ball was passed to Jack, 3 seconds. Jack dodged a defender, spinning near the 3-point line. The crowd held its breath. 2 seconds. He jumped. The ball left his fingertips just as the buzzer blared. It hung in the air, seemingly frozen in the momentary silence. Before falling, swish clean through the net. The gymnasium exploded. The roar of the crowd was so loud Zoe felt it in her chest. People were jumping, screaming, hugging each other. The team flooded Jack in the center of the court, lifting him onto their shoulders. Zoe could only sit, frozen in her seat, feeling sick. In the middle of the celebratory chaos, Sarah, the school newspaper editor, ran onto the court with her phone held high, clearly recording. She pushed through the throng of players and shoved the phone in Jack's sweaty, grinning face.
"Jack, an incredible shot!"
Sarah yelled to be heard over the din.
"This whole season you've been on fire, but tonight, this was something else. What was your motivation?"
Jack laughed, still catching his breath, propped up by his teammates. He swiped the sweat from his brow. Then he looked up, past the sea of cheering students, past the players. His eyes shot straight to the 6th row. He stared directly at Zoe. The noise all around Zoe seemed to fade, replaced by a dull static in her ears.
It's pretty simple, actually,
Jack said, his voice carrying clearly, even from a distance. He didn't take his eyes off Zoe.
My new girlfriend. She's my inspiration.
The statement hung in the air for a fraction of a second. Then the crowd exploded for a second time. But this time it wasn't for Jack. The spotlight, both literal and figurative, shifted. Hundreds of heads turned in unison. They were pointing. They were cheering. They were cheering for Zoe. Chloe and Mia were screaming and jumping, pointing up at Zoe as if she were the victor. For Zoe, it was the end. It was the final nail in the coffin. The applause sounded like accusations. The cheers felt like insults. She wasn't an inspiration. She was a lie. The nausea that had been simmering gently now rose in her throat with full force. She couldn't breathe. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. As the entire gym adored her, Zoe stumbled to her feet, put a hand over her mouth and ran. She pushed past confused students, stumbled down the bleacher steps, and fled out the gym doors into the cold, empty hallway. The hallway was cold and dead silent. A stark contrast to the roar inside the gym. The sound of the crowd, cheering for her, was now just a dull hum behind the closed doors. Zoe leaned against the bank of blue lockers, her chest tight. She couldn't breathe right. The nausea was no longer a metaphor. She genuinely felt like she might be sick. The wall in front of her seemed to spin. My inspiration. The words echoed in her head, each repetition feeling like an accusation. She had deceived the most sincere person in the entire school. She wasn't an inspiration. She was a fraud. The gym doors banged open, spilling bright light and raucous noise into the dim hallway. Zoe flinched, her heart leaping into her throat.
Zoe, wait!
It was Jack's voice. He was jogging to catch up to her, his breath still coming in gasps from the game. His face was etched with pure confusion and concern.
Hey, what's wrong? Are you sick?
Zoe turned her face away, pressing her cheek into the cold metal of the locker. She couldn't look at him.
Go away.
She whispered, her voice cracking.
Please, just don't look at me.
Jack stopped a few feet from her, clearly baffled by her reaction. He had been expecting happy tears, or maybe a cute, embarrassed blush. He had not been expecting this raw panic.
Hey, what's wrong?
He said softly, moving closer like approaching a wounded animal.
Did I say the wrong thing? Did the crowd freak you out? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that.
He was misunderstanding. He thought she was overwhelmed by the attention, not the guilt. And that somehow made it so much worse. Zoe shook her head against the locker, hot tears finally escaping.
I can't.
She choked out a sob.
This is all. It's too much.
Okay, shh.
Jack said. He was right behind her now.
It's okay.
He hesitated for a second, then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She was rigid.
Look at me, Zoe.
Reluctantly, Zoe slowly turned. Her face was wet with tears, her eyes red. Seeing her this fragile made something in Jack's chest soften.
Hey,
he whispered, his voice losing all traces of its post-game adrenaline. He brought up his hand, the same one that had just scored the winning shot, and hesitantly, gently, brushed the top of her head, his fingers awkwardly but tenderly touching her hair.
you're okay. It's just the crowd. They're loud, I know.
He looked into her eyes, trying to understand what was happening.
Honestly,
He said quietly, saying the sweet thing that only twisted the knife of guilt deeper.
I don't care about any of them. I don't even care about the game. I'm just glad you were here.
Zoe stared up at him, her lips trembling, trapped between the urge to confess and the urge to just drown in the sincerity of his eyes.
Jack,
Shh,
He said. He thought she was about to say something self-deprecating.
you don't have to say anything.
He used his thumb to wipe a stray tear from her cheek. Zoe's world narrowed. There was no gym, no cheers, no dare. There was just Jack, standing so close, looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. The adrenaline from the game was still humming in him, mixed with his genuine concern for her distress. He saw her lips slightly parted.
Zoe,
He whispered, more as a question. He didn't wait for an answer. Slowly, he bent his head and pressed his lips to hers. It was soft at first, just a pressure. Zoe's mind went completely blank. This was her first kiss. It was happening in a smelly school hallway, after the biggest lie of her life, with the boy of her dreams. She should have pushed him away. She should have screamed, but she couldn't. When she froze, Jack took it as permission. He tilted his head slightly, and the kiss, which had been hesitant, deepened. It wasn't a comforting kiss anymore. It was a real, feeling, electric shock to the system kiss. Without thinking, her fingers gripped the front of his sweat-damp jersey. The gym doors burst open again.
Jack, where's the man of the woe?
The boisterous voices of the basketball team spilled into the hall. In a split second, Jack quickly pulled away. Zoe stumbled back, gasping, dizzy. But Jack didn't let go completely. As he turned to face his stunned team, his hand instinctively moved and grabbed Zoe's. Lacing their fingers together tightly, 4 team members stood in the doorway, their jaws slack.
Sorry, Captain.
One of them, the football quarterback who was also there, said. Jack, never one to lose his cool, flashed a casual grin at his team, as if they had just interrupted a normal conversation, not an intense kiss.
it's all good, guys.
He said, his voice steady.
I was just making sure my girlfriend was okay.
He was still holding her hand. Zoe couldn't look at anyone. Her face felt like it was on fire. With her free hand, she pressed the back of it to her mouth, as if trying to block the lingering sensation of the kiss. She ducked her head low, hiding her crimson face from the team's stares. Jack squeezed Zoe's hand once.
You guys go on ahead.
He said to his team.
We'll catch up.
The team, still looking shell-shocked, exchanged glances and hurried off, their muffled laughter echoing down the hall. Jack turned back to Zoe. She was still looking down, trembling.
Hey,
He said softly. Zoe couldn't answer. She had just kissed Jack, and she'd liked it. The lie had just become 1,000 times more complicated.